It's now time for Party Chat Sports.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?
What is up, Party Chat Sports? Welcome back to the channel. It's one of your hosts, Caleb Gill, and it's here. It is officially draft day. It's exciting. I've been waiting all off season for this, and part of it, like the draft process, I've mentioned this a couple different times already. The draft process is fun. Love the mock drafts. I know like Dylan, Drew, Cam, like they really get into it as well. And Drew even alluded to yesterday. We were talking about the PFF mock draft simulator and like the different things that, you know, if you are a user or like a member or something like that, PFF, like you can have like different achievements you can get. Like you would have had the achievements locked in quick. Dylan and Drew especially have done a lot of mock drafts this year. They haven't posted a lot, or not, maybe not for the channel per se, but like they've done a lot of simulations for this draft, and it's exciting, but I am ready for it. You know, you can only talk so long about the draft. It's starting to drag on, in my opinion, it feels. I'm ready. I'm excited. I want to find out who goes where. I'm just ready for it, truthfully. I think Dylan's getting to that point because he's tired of the Steelers talk with like, are they going to take Shedeur Sanders? Are they going to take a Jackson Dart? What are they going to do? There's a lot of question marks about quarterback for the Steelers. So kind of what I'm doing today is just a last little draft discussion. It's going to be random. There's nothing really specific. I just wanted to hop on the mic here for a couple minutes and just kind of give my thoughts before tonight. Before Roger Goodell walks across the stage and announces the first overall pick, assuming it still looks like it's going to be Cam Ward to the Tennessee Titans. I looked at the betting odds, actually, before hopping on, and on FanDuel, he is minus 30,000 odds on FanDuel right now to be the number one overall pick. It's probably going to be the Titans. They haven't addressed the quarterback position, so it just has felt inevitable. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of movement does happen after the Titans make that first pick. So, like, the way I'm looking at this draft, it looks like 1, 2, and 3 is pretty set in stone. Like, it's going to be Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter. In which order? I mean, who knows? I think Hunter goes 2 and Carter goes 3. I don't necessarily know, though, if that's to the Browns at 2 and the Giants at 3. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now. There's a lot of rumors. And this is like, we're getting to that point where it's kind of hard to know what's real, what's fake. I mean, Cam he's been got a couple different times just by the troll Twitter accounts. But even the stuff that comes from actual legit sources is kind of hard to digest and like, all right, what's smoke and what's real? And usually when there's smoke, there's fire, and there's some truth to some things, but it's really hard to say what's kind of true right now. And the reason I say that here with the second overall pick to the Browns, I'm seeing a lot right now of the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know, they have the kid general manager that looks like he's our age. You know, he's in his 30s. Looks like he's just a gamer. Like James Gladstone, his first draft for the Jaguars, I could see him, you know, being the young, cocky type guy. I mean, you have to establish yourself as a general manager, and how else are you going to earn the respect of your peers, especially with how youthful he is without being bold. You know, you don't make those. You got to be aggressive if you want to earn the respect of others. And I could see that being a scenario where Gladstone and the Jaguars decide they need to move up from 5. They need to move up to 2 and take a Travis Hunter. I was listening to Unsportsmanlike earlier, the ESPN radio broadcast show. And before I was able to tune in, they had Adam Schefter on. And apparently it got brought up that the Jaguars are looking to make a sexy pick. Like, explosive or something like that. It really seems like, you know, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. I think Cam had the Jaguars taking, Tet McMillan yesterday in our mock draft. Not to completely spoil that mock draft. If you haven't watched that mock draft yet, do make sure you visit the channel and watch our most latest mock draft at Party Chat Sports. That's our final mock draft of the year. Full first round. We go back and forth. It was a good time. That's one thing that I love doing with the guys is just kind of doing those mock drafts and just getting everybody's takes. I mean, there's some shockers. There's some things that, you know, you don't necessarily see coming. Like, never mind. I'm not going to touch that one. But do make sure you go check that out at Party Chat Sports. Cam had the Jaguars taking Tet McMillan. For the longest time, I've been sitting here thinking they're going to take Mason Graham, just because Mason Graham's the best player available. And now, I don't know, because it does seem more and more likely that the Jaguars are going to take maybe a Tet McMillan at 5 if they stay there. I heard Ashton Jeanty conversations. Again, a lot of smoke. I have no idea how true some of these rumors are, because that's at the end of the day, that's what these are, is rumors. But Ashton Jeanty is now coming into the conversation for the Jaguars. So could the Jaguars get that desperate where they're trading up with the Browns to number 2? Like, if the Browns just are sitting there, it's like, we need to rebuild. Let's acquire some capital. Maybe we're not 100% sold on what we want to do with Travis Hunter. Maybe we want him to play one way. Travis Hunter wants to play both ways. Maybe there's a little bit of a debate in that room of what you're going to do. Maybe you don't love Abdul Carter, or you don't want to have 2 edge rushers, or whatever that conversation looks like on why you wouldn't take an Abdul Carter instead of Hunter. But if you can move back, I mean, it's only a couple spots. So you move from 2 to 5. You can still take a Mason Graham probably if you want to build up that defensive front. You still have almost your pick of the litter. Like, that's still a good spot. Number 5 is still, you'll get some good players. Or a good player plus the capital that you'd be getting on top of that from the Jaguars. So that's not a bad idea for the Browns. It's just, are the Jaguars and the new young general manager bold enough to do what it's going to have to take to move up to number 2? And I briefly touched on this yesterday, but there's been no activity. Usually at this point we have, like, you know, somebody's traded a first round pick for somebody. Everybody 1 through 32 has their own picks, their own original picks, which is insanity. Nobody's traded a first round pick for another player. Nobody's moved up into the first overall, second overall pick yet as of this recording at 9:07 p.m. Eastern time on April 23rd. Like, nobody has made that move yet. I'm still waiting, and that first move is probably, it could come at 2. And there's a chance that by the time this gets posted in the morning, that the Browns have made a draft day decision, like the movie Draft Day. Instead of the Browns moving up, though, they move back. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I ultimately think the Browns stay at 2, though. Like, it's difficult for me to believe that the Browns are going to make the pick, or trade the pick, I should say. I think they're just going to stay there draft the Travis Hunter, and figure out what to do with him from there. That seems like the best avenue to me. I do like the idea of them trading back though. And then the Giants, you can kind of do the same thing, where whoever the Browns don't take, assuming Cam Ward's taken first overall, if the Giants want to trade back, maybe they're not in love with Abdul Carter. Now, I'd rather Abdul Carter over Thibodeau that they have. I'd trade Thibodeau if I'm the Giants and get Carter instead. But maybe they like him. And then maybe a team wants to trade, or maybe somebody wants to jump the Patriots for a Will Campbell or an Armand Membu. I anticipate some trade and some movement once the draft gets rolling. It's just nobody wants to do anything yet because you don't know what the rest of the league's thinking. You don't know what the other 31 teams, other than yourself, is thinking at the moment. Especially the ones that are in front of you. So if you're the Giants, you're going to wait till the Browns make their selection before you trade back. If you're the Browns, you theoretically could make that trade now if you like the compensation. But you probably still want to hear that Cam Ward won't be available. Like, you want to hear Roger Goodell say, Tennessee Titans select with the first overall pick, Cam Ward, quarterback, yada, yada, yada. You probably want to hear that before you make that trade. Just in case something insane happens. So that's kind of what I'm watching out for, because I do think we will see, one of my predictions in this year's draft is we will see a trade into the top 10. So a team that's not in the top 10 trading up into that top 10 for a non-quarterback. So this isn't me saying the Steelers are going to jump the Saints to pick 8, the draft Shedeur Sanders. That's not what I'm saying here. I do think, I don't know who that player they're coming up for is. Maybe you're looking at, does Ashton Jeanty get past the Raiders? Who's going to want to jump the Bears then? Assuming Jeanty falls, who's going to look to jump the Bears for Ashton Jeanty? Or say Mason Graham starts falling. And you're looking, it's like, do we need to get in front of the Raiders? Do we need to get in front of the Jets? Do we need to get in front? Like, how far up does a team like, who needs 49ers, that's kind of on the outside looking into the top 10. I think they're pick 11. Do they make the move for a guy like Mason Graham, who's probably a top 5 player in this class? But if you're looking at candidates that are going to be guys that potentially fall down, I think Mason Graham is a candidate for that. And to no fault of his own, it's just the position he plays and the value of some other spots and where teams might not necessarily value Mason Graham as much as others. But I do ultimately think there will be a non-quarterback move up, or a move up into the top 10 for a non-quarterback in this year's draft. I just don't know who, and I don't know for who that's going to be for. But that's kind of the prediction that I landed on that about a month or so ago, and I just kind of like it, so I'm sticking with that. The other prediction that I've been pretty set on is the amount of quarterbacks that go in this year's first round. So I don't see 2 quarterbacks going in the top 10. I think one does, and that's the number 1 overall, with the number 1 overall pick. I don't think the Saints take him at 9. I was reading Matt Miller's, I believe, his mock draft. Yeah, Matt Miller with ESPN. I was reading his mock draft earlier, his final one, and he said that he's heard no rumblings, none of his sources or anything like that believe that the Saints are going to take a quarterback there at 9. I'm sure the Steelers are being fed that same intel, because those are the only 2 teams that I'm worrying about making a pick for a quarterback in the top 10. Other than that, I genuinely think Shedeur Sanders falls, and this isn't just to give Dylan a heart attack. I think he falls. And it's like, all right, how far is he going to fall? So then you're looking, all right, is a team like Dylan mentioned the Giants coming up for Shedeur Sanders. Do they come back into the first round? How far up do you have to go in the first round if you're coming back in? Or if you're the Rams that are sitting there with a later first round draft pick, how far up do you have to go? You're probably looking at like the Bengals, Seahawks, like that pick 17 to 20 range to jump in front of the Steelers would be my guess. And all of this could be solved, by the way, if Aaron Rodgers made up his freaking mind. Jets fans, we can say what we want about Aaron Rodgers. I lost a lot of respect for him after that last interview, and that could just be me sounding like a Jets fan. But that, whatever. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about Aaron Rodgers at the moment. But what I will say is, yes, he did hold the Jets hostage, but at least he gave us a decision, the Tuesday or Wednesday before the NFL draft? Not this late. Pretty much this late, but not quite. Like, we knew heading into the draft, Aaron Rodgers officially was our guy. We had that press conference the day before the draft, or I think it was the Wednesday. That Wednesday before the draft was Aaron Rodgers' first press conference. At least we had that part figured out. At least he did us that solid, okay? Other than that, kind of crap the bed with how things worked out. And that's not all his fault, and I'm not going to dive into Aaron Rodgers and the Jets much further than that, but what he's doing with the Steelers is holding them hostage. If the Steelers want him, you would think they're not going to take a quarterback with that first round draft pick. But if the Steelers don't know what Aaron Rodgers wants to do, then it's like, we might have to take a quarterback with that first pick out of necessity. And I know I'm a big believer in you don't take a quarterback to take a quarterback. Steelers might have to. I just kind of think they're in a tough spot, and they only have themselves to blame. It all for them. It really started with their lack of trust in Justin Fields, and I'm grateful for that. But I know Dylan is not at all. But yeah, I'm curious to see how far Sanders drops, and the Steelers factor of it all. Are the Steelers moving up? Or is a team going to jump the Steelers? Or do the Steelers just stay put at 21 like they did the year Kenny Pickett was drafted? And just stay there and take your guy? That's going to be interesting. And the trade-up thing I find interesting too. The Panthers, I've been seeing a lot of this lately, and it feels like the Panthers just wanting something to happen. Like they're trying to push out, hey, yoo-hoo, look at me. Please come trade up. I think at one point, the Panthers had said, yeah, we'll trade down with a team that wants to jump the Saints. And now, I feel like every day I see something about the Panthers looking to trade down. That feels targeted. And it feels almost targeted to the Steelers. Because who else is going to make a move to jump the Saints? If you're jumping the Saints, it's with the idea that you're going to take a quarterback. And it's going to be either Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart would be a wild card, I think. I see a scenario where Jackson Dart is taken before Shedeur Sanders. I ultimately think he's a better quarterback, just Shedeur Sanders. Cam is a big believer that Shedeur Sanders, the only thing he's got going for him is his last name. And I don't entirely agree with that, but I don't necessarily entirely disagree with that. Like, his last name does play a role. He's still a solid quarterback. I just don't think he is a first-round draft pick. I don't think Jackson Dart is either. But he might be better than Shedeur Sanders. In the right system, too. So, it's kind of where I'm at with, quarterback rumors. Dylan, I'm sorry. Whatever I do, I apologize in advance. I'm going to give Dylan so much crap if this... It's going to be a rough night. I may not bully him to the extent that I bullied Cam when the Vikings drafted J.J. McCarthy. That was also after a couple of Michelob Ultras, too. So we'll see how I'm feeling. We'll see how the brewskis are flowing by the time the Steelers make a selection. But it's going to be interesting, for sure. A couple other things I just kind of wanted to touch on. I mentioned like Mason Graham possibly being a guy that falls. Somebody's going to fall. It happens every year where it's like, this is a consensus top player in this draft. How is he falling? How is he falling? So the two candidates I had for that, Mason Graham's one. And Mason Graham's only one. I was looking at, again, Matt Miller's mock draft. I think he's kind of, keyed in to certain things. And he had Mason Graham falling, let's see, in his mock draft to the 49ers at pick 11. I don't know if he falls that far, but a fall, for me, a fall for Mason Graham is anything further than 5. So even if he's there at 7 for the Jets or 8 for the Panthers, like that's still a fall in my opinion for a guy like Mason Graham. I can see a scenario where Mason Graham is that guy that falls. If the Jaguars don't pick Mason Graham, then it's going to have a domino effect on a lot of things, but also one of those dominoes that's going to, be affected is where he goes and how far down does he go. It's hard for me to think that Mason Graham is not going to be taken with a top 10 pick. But we'll see. Like, is Walter Nolan taken above Mason Graham? I don't think so. Not impossible, though. The other guy I was thinking was Will Campbell. And I mentioned this yesterday. I had Armand Membu taken above Will Campbell in our mock draft. And it's going to come down to the Patriots, I think. Will Campbell, he'll either be picked 4 to the Patriots or I could see him start falling. And maybe he's a guy that somebody, like the Dolphins, maybe the Dolphins, with their hole on the offensive line, maybe the Dolphins see Will Campbell, the Patriots not take Will Campbell, him start falling, and it's like, crap, we got to jump the Jets. So maybe they trade up to the 6th pick for Will Campbell. Or maybe they get lucky and take him at 13. Get another lucky bounce when it comes to an offensive lineman sliding for whatever reason. There's going to be teams that overthink things with Will Campbell. The arm size, it depends on how the team feels and how the offensive line coach feels. If teams are really that scared of it and don't view him as an NFL tackle, then he's not going to go in the top 5. But if teams view him that way, and if the Patriots are one of those teams, he's going to go in the top 5. There's just something inside of me that thinks that the Patriots are going to go Armand Membu. That's just my gut right now. And for the longest time, it was Will Campbell is going to be a Patriot, and now I don't feel as great about that. So if those two players, if Mason Graham and Will Campbell are falling, who is being overdrafted? Is it Kelvin Banks? Is a team going to draft Kelvin Banks over Will Campbell? That sounds like horse malarkey. That sounds insane. But how often do we get offensive linemen that are overdrafted for another good offensive lineman? The Jets did it with Mekhi Becton over Tristan Wirfs. Who did the Titans took somebody a couple of years ago? Teams are going to... It's how you value offensive line. And every team's different when they grade and come up with these things. So Kelvin Banks, it's a more than 1% chance that this happens. I'm not putting a high percentage on it. But if there's somebody that gets overdrafted, Kelvin Banks could be one of those guys. If a team, again, if you do not view Will Campbell as an NFL offensive tackle, tackle's an important position. Kelvin Banks, you might view him as an NFL tackle, so you take him over Campbell, and that's where he gets overdrafted. The other guy I'm kind of thinking is Mykel Williams. Edge rusher. Teams just really value edge to begin with. And like Williams could get drafted over Mason Graham. I would take Graham over Williams, but Graham doesn't play a premier position where Mykel Williams does. Excuse me. So that's kind of, I'm looking at Kelvin Banks and Mykel Williams as like guys that could be overdrafted potentially. and some of those guys that get, pretty much in their spot, like who they're getting overdrafted for and who's falling because of that, Will Campbell and Mason Graham are the two guys that probably suffer from some of that. I think that's kind of it. The things I really wanted to touch on was my thoughts on the amount of quarterbacks in this year's class, how the first 3 picks are going to go, the Jaguars, really being more interesting than I originally thought. Like, we're getting into the draft, we're getting closer, and the Jaguars seem to be one of the biggest wild cards in this draft for me. Just because, for the longest time, like I said, I thought they were going to go best player available. And the way that I've done my mock drafts, that best player is Mason Graham. But now, they really might be trying for that sexy pick. And you do have to factor in the fact that their general manager is the youngest general manager. He looks like a kid. And he's going to think a little bit differently than these old heads. These guys that have been doing it and have been around for a little bit longer. He's going to try making I could see his scenario where he's going to try making a name for himself and making that splash. So the Jaguars they intrigue me so much. And they didn't a day or two ago. Like, the closer and closer we get, the more and more I'm intrigued by what the Jaguars doing. It's really interesting to see. The Panthers looking to trade down. I think a lot of teams are looking to trade down and acquire more capital. The Jets, I'd like to see possibly trade down. The Raiders, there's a lot of these teams I could see. Maybe the Patriots. Maybe the Patriots would rather trade down. Maybe a team wants to jump the Jaguars for a Tet or a Mason Graham, for somebody. And the Patriots want to trade down and acquire more picks. I don't know. We are going to see some movement. We're going to see some trades. Believe it or not. I will be... I don't even know what I'm going to think or do. If every team sticks with their current pick, with their pick, still blows my mind that all 32 teams have their own first-round draft pick as of now, this close to the draft. Insane. Absolutely insane. There's going to be movement. It's just, when does that movement start? Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this draft season here at Party Chat Sports. We've had a lot of fun. Mock drafts, discussions, everything that we have done here for our teams, NFL, so be it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to everybody that subscribed. Tell anyone that you know. If you love our channel and you think somebody else that you know would love the channel, have them subscribe, have them follow, leave some comments, give us feedback. We're always looking to improve and see what we can do better. So do leave that feedback. And we'll see what we got cooking here after the draft. That's the one thing I'm really worried about, is what we're going to do after the draft. But we'll figure something out. We'll get something out there for you guys. Thank you again. I cannot stress it enough. Thank you so much for following us this draft season here at Party Chat Sports. I've loved it. I hope you guys have as well. Let's have fun this weekend. It should be a good draft. There's going to be some shockers, some spoilers. So maybe not spoilers, unless you're just following Adam Schefter, who spoils draft picks. That's a real dick thing to do, by the way. Hate that. I absolutely hate when reporters do that. They spoil and they announce a pick before the pick's actually announced, but is what it is, right? We'll be back with a little draft recap at some point, and then we'll see what else we put out this off season. But go check out all the remaining draft content that we do have up on the feed that we've been posting. You can still do it. You can still watch. But let's enjoy tonight. Let's have a great draft weekend. Follow at Party Chat Sports. Tell anyone and everyone. Peace.